Do you believe that freedom is doing what you want, when you want? Perhaps this is the biggest trap of modern times. We live in an era where boundlessness is celebrated, but few realize that this directionless freedom is actually an invisible prison. While we follow impulses, we ignore the age-old truth revealed by the Stoics: true freedom is born not of indulgence, but of self-control. Epictetus once said, "No man is free if he is not master of himself." And this phrase echoes strongly these days, where so many feel lost, overwhelmed, and at the mercy of unstable emotions. The good news: there is a way out. A safe, practical, and proven route to taking back control of one's life, and it starts with discipline. Get ready, because what you're going to discover here isn't what the world usually teaches. Most people think that being free is simply being able to do whatever you want, without rules, without limits. But what few realize is that this can turn into a trap. When you follow only your momentary desires, you end up becoming a slave to them. With each uncontrolled impulse, you lose some of your power of choice. Real freedom is having the mastery to choose what will do you good in the long run, and not just what gives you immediate pleasure. Imagine someone who wakes up and does only what feels like it. He skips meals, ignores appointments, gives in to addictions, and ends the day feeling empty. Now think of someone who decides to get up even though they are lazy, organizes their routine, chooses well what they consume, physically and mentally. Who seems freer in the end? The former lives hostage to his impulses, the second, as the author of his own history. And that changes everything. Self-control is not a prison, it is a key. A key that opens doors to more conscious choices, healthier relationships, true productivity, and inner peace. When you learn to say no to yourself, you begin to say yes to a fuller life. It seems contradictory at first, but the more you train yourself, the lighter and clearer the path becomes. It's like taming a wild horse. At first it knocks you down, resists, tests you. But with constancy and firmness, he becomes his ally. The same is true of the mind. She wants comfort, distraction, escape. But when you learn to guide it, it takes you much further. Freedom, then, is not in following any direction but in choosing which path to take wisely. And you know the most curious? When you master yourself, the world outside loses the power to control you. The opinions of others weigh less, temptations don't easily lead you astray, and you begin to live with an inner strength that inspires. True freedom is not the absence of limits. It is the presence of consciousness. We live in a time where the phrase "do what makes you happy" has become almost a mantra. But does it really lead to happiness? The idea that freedom means living without restraint seems seductive until reality takes its toll. When everything is allowed, nothing has value. When you can do anything, you lose the criterion of what really matters. Freedom without direction becomes disorder. And disorder, in turn, breeds confusion, frustration, and loss of purpose. The absence of personal rules creates fertile ground for procrastination, self-sabotage, and addiction to immediate pleasures. You get distracted by social networks, eat what you shouldn't, sleep late, run away from responsibilities. And at the end of the day he feels exhausted, without even knowing why. Total freedom seems to have robbed them of their vital energy. That's when you realize without structure, life becomes a minefield of bad decisions. Notice how the most accomplished people are, in general, those who impose limits on themselves. They say no wisely. They choose what they are going to do, even when they don't feel like it. They know that freedom is not the absence of effort, but the ability to choose clearly. And this is only possible when it is understood that external control begins with internal control. Without discipline, all freedom dissolves into chaos. Think of a ship adrift, with no rudder, no direction. He is free, but he is not going anywhere. That is a life without principles. You can do whatever you want, but without direction, you only move away from your potential. Having freedom without self-control is like having a powerful car, but without brakes it sounds exciting, until you lose control and everything falls apart. Therefore, what looks like freedom may actually be a disguised form of imprisonment. Prison of impulses, laziness, anxiety. And this leads us to reflect, is what we call freedom really a choice? Or just a reflection of our own lack of control? From an early age we are bombarded with messages that say follow your desires, don't repress yourself, live without rules. Advertisements, movies and even music exalt instant pleasure as if it were the path to happiness. Modern culture sells freedom as a right to do whatever one wants, without restrictions. But is this really freedom, or just a smart way to keep people hostage to consumption and empty entertainment? The truth is that much of this advertised freedom is a carefully designed trap. When you buy compulsively, eat without thinking, distract yourself all the time with screens and dopamine, you feel free. But he is being led like a puppet by impulses and desires that are not truly his own. This false freedom is comfortable at first, but it ends up creating an existential void. And behind this model of life, there is a system that profits from its lack of control. The more you give in to impulses, the more you spend, the more you consume, the more you seek quick solutions. The industry knows that a disciplined human being is a selective consumer. But someone who lives on the basis of anxiety and immediate pleasure is highly manipulable. True independence begins when you stop automatically responding to what the world expects of you. The Stoics had seen this for millennia. Marcus Aurelius warned, be like the rock against which the waves crash and break. In other words, don't let yourself be shaped by what others think or say. To have freedom is to be able to live according to your principles, even when the whole world is moving in the opposite direction. This takes courage, but it brings an inner peace that no fleeting pleasure offers. So the next time society tries to sell you freedom in the form of impulse, pleasure, or distraction, stop. Breathe. Question. Is that really what you want? Or are you just reacting to a conditioning that takes you away from what really matters? It may sound strange at first glance, but learning to say no to yourself is one of the greatest acts of freedom anyone can perform. It's easy to follow what gives you pleasure in the moment, eat what you want, procrastinate, avoid discomfort. It's hard to look in the mirror and decide to go against that will, because you know there's something bigger at stake. That's the difference between living on automatic and living with purpose. When you say no to the impulse to sleep in, and yes to the commitment to train or work on your projects, you're not punishing yourself, you're breaking free. It is choosing for the long term. It is prioritizing what really matters. It is in this type of choice that personal power resides. Each no said with conscience turns into a yes to your evolution. We often confuse this self-control with repression. But it is just the opposite. Those who live indulging in all desires are not enjoying life, they are being carried by it. It is as if the rudder is in the hands of a childish instinct, and not of his adult mind. Saying no requires maturity, and it is this maturity that builds the path to real freedom. Want a practical example? Imagine that you have a habit of eating sweets every night. One day, you decide to stop. At first, your body complains, your mind makes excuses. But as you persist, you feel something different: clarity. Confidence. A feeling of mastery that goes far beyond food. That no was just the beginning of a new relationship with yourself. So every time you say no to an immediate desire, remember you're saying yes to your best version. Self-control is not a burden, it is armor. And the more you wear it, the freer you feel to choose, create and conquer with awareness. A mind without discipline is like a river without a bed, it spreads, overflows, destroys everything around it. Random thoughts, unstable emotions, impulsive decisions, all of these arise when there is no internal structure to guide the mental flow. And the worst? This happens in silence. Without fanfare, a disorganized mind corrodes dreams, sabotages plans and weakens the will. It is a slow but potent poison. How many times have you found yourself stuck in spirals of negative thoughts, even though you knew they weren't getting you anywhere? The undisciplined mind clings to fear, to comparison, to the desire for control. She doesn't know how to rest, or focus. He keeps jumping from one worry to another, like an agitated monkey. And if you don't learn how to train her, she becomes your biggest enemy. But the good news is the mind can be educated. Just as the body responds to physical training, thinking responds to mental training. Meditation, daily writing, focused reading, these are all practices that shape the internal flow. Start with 5 minutes of silence a day. Observe the thoughts without reacting. Gradually, you will notice that you have more control over them than you imagined. Epictetus said that it is not events that disturb us, but the way we interpret them. A trained mind sees things as they are. An undisciplined mind creates monsters from shadows. And it is this distortion of reality that fuels anxiety, procrastination, and discouragement. Mental discipline, on the other hand, brings clarity, presence, and balance. In the end, the mind is your most powerful and most dangerous tool. It's up to you to decide whether she's going to build or destroy. But one thing is certain: if you don't lead her, she will lead you. And usually, to places you don't want to go. Self-discipline is often seen as harsh, almost punitive. But it's actually one of the greatest acts of self-love you can perform. Because when you do what needs to be done, even if you don't feel like it, you're saying to yourself, I care about my future. With each disciplined attitude, you strengthen your self-esteem and get closer to who you really want to become. Think about how many times you've put off something important because you weren't motivated. Now imagine what your life would be like if, instead of relying on motivation, you relied on discipline. The difference is brutal. As long as motivation comes and goes, discipline remains. It is what lifts you up on difficult days, what keeps you steady when no one is watching, what sustains you when everything seems to come crashing down. And this goes for any area: health, work, spirituality, finances. There is no growth without constancy. And there is no constancy without self-discipline. When you commit to small, daily acts like waking up early, meditating, studying, or saving, you're building a solid foundation that will weather the storms of life. It's like putting down deep roots that sustain your freedom. There is a special strength in those who do what needs to be done without needing applause. This force is silent, but transformative. It shapes your identity. After all, you're not what you say you're going to do, or what you do repeatedly. And the more you act with discipline, the more your mind starts to trust you. And this internal confidence is worth more than any external recognition. So if you feel like you're stuck, lost, or weak, start with discipline. Don't wait to feel ready. Start small, start now. Because each act of discipline is a brick in the construction of your freedom. And, over time, you will realize what once seemed like a sacrifice has become your greatest source of strength. Life's biggest challenges, in fact, are usually small and daily. It is the impulse to check your cell phone every 5 minutes, to eat out of anxiety, to react angrily, to procrastinate even though you know what needs to be done. It is in these moments, apparently simple, that his freedom is at stake. Controlling these impulses is a constant exercise and also a clear sign of inner strength. It is not about becoming a robot or living in repression. It's about learning to pause. To recognize the impulse, take a deep breath and decide consciously. That changes everything. When you act on automatic, you lose the power of choice. But when you can stop for a second, observe, and respond clearly, you take control of the helm of life itself. And that's an incomparable feeling. A good exercise is the choice point. Whenever you feel an impulse to eat something you don't need, to run away from a task, to blow yourself up at someone, ask, does this action bring me closer or further away from the person I want to be? This simple question, asked frequently, refines your perception and strengthens your discipline. Gradually, you start to react less and choose more. Of course, you won't always get it right. And that's okay. Impulse control is not about perfection, but about progress. Making mistakes is part of it, but repeating the mistake without reflecting is what keeps you stuck. Therefore, every time you overcome an impulse, no matter how small, celebrate internally. It is a sign of evolution. And the more you beat the small ones, the more prepared you will be for the big ones. Mastering daily impulses is a workout that silently shapes your identity. It's not something that others see, but you feel it. And this feeling of self-control strengthens you inside, aligns you with your values and brings you closer to a genuine freedom, the one that no one can take away. Resisting an impulse is like lifting an invisible weight. It takes effort, but it makes you stronger with each repetition. Every time you say no to something that would bring immediate pleasure, but that would take you away from your values, you gain power. Power over oneself. And this strength cannot be bought, it is not learned from books, it is built, brick by brick, in the daily practice of resistance. It's curious how a simple no can change the course of your day. Refuse that candy you don't need, don't respond to that provocation, close the social media tab and focus on what matters. These acts seem small, but they add up. They are like silent vows in favor of your growth. And over time, you become someone you can trust not just to others, but to yourself. The big secret here is to understand that the discomfort of resisting passes, but the pride of having resisted remains. It's like climbing a hill. It's tiring, it makes you want to stop, but the view from up there justifies the effort. Each impulse overcome brings you closer to a strong mind, a stable soul, a life with purpose. And the more you experience this force, the harder it is to want to go back to getting out of control. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus said that true power lies in controlling what is inside us. And what's inside? Desires, fears, desires. When you master it, no one dominates you. You become unwavering, centered, present. And ironically, the more you resist what distracts you, the more you feel light, free, aligned. So don't underestimate the impact of resisting today. It may seem little, but it is exactly this resistance that builds the version of you that is capable of transforming everything. Personal power is born of self-control, and the more you exercise it, the more invincible you become on the inside. It may seem contradictory, but the more structured your routine is, the freer you feel. This is because well-defined habits take the weight off constant decisions and reduce mental chaos. When you know what you need to do and at what time, you have energy left over to focus on what really matters. A well-constructed routine is not a prison, it is a safe trail that takes you where you want to go. Without a routine, every day becomes an improvisation. And living improvising is tiring. You wake up not knowing where to start, get lost in distractions, procrastinate on important tasks, and end the day with the feeling that nothing has moved. With a clear routine, each action has a place and a time. This generates clarity, time savings and, above all, mental tranquility. Habits function as invisible building blocks. Small, silent, but fundamental. And when they're positive, like waking up early, meditating, studying, exercising, they begin to shape their identity. You don't have to be perfect every day, but you do need to be consistent. It is repetition, not intensity, that generates real transformation. A simple trick to developing good habits is to use triggers. For example, after brushing your teeth, you take a 10-minute reading. Or, right after breakfast, write down the 3 priorities of the day. These rituals condition you, little by little, to act automatically and disciplinedly. And when discipline becomes a habit, it becomes almost invisible but profoundly powerful. So if you want more freedom, start by adjusting your routine. Establish blocks of time for what is essential. Cut off the excess. Simplify. Because the right structure doesn't limit you, it frees you from chaos. And in this new mental space, the clarity that drives your evolution is born. I want to be healthier. I want to be more productive. Phrases like these seem like good intentions, but they lack clarity and force. They are vague, open goals, easy to postpone. Now compare it to I'm going to train every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. This is a personal rule. It does not depend on motivation or mood. It is a clear, objective, firm decision. And that completely changes the game. Personal rules work because they reduce the room for internal negotiation. You don't have to decide every day whether or not to do something. The decision has been made before. This saves mental energy and strengthens your discipline. It is as if you stop being a slave to the will of the moment and become true to your own principles. And when you follow your own rules, you become someone you can trust, especially to yourself. Want to see how this applies in practice? Instead of I'm going to read more, say I'm going to read 10 pages every day before bed. Instead of I want to save money, establish I don't spend more than X dollars a week on superfluities. The clarity of these rules turns intention into action. And the result? Consistency. And consistency is the bridge between desire and achievement. It is important to remember that these rules should be realistic and adjustable. If you overdo it, you give up. If it makes it too easy, it doesn't evolve. Find the healthy challenge point. Start small but firm. What matters is that the rule functions as a commitment not to the world, but to your own evolution. You become the judge and executor of your own growth system. In the end, those who live on vague goals live on recurring frustrations. Those who adopt personal rules, on the other hand, live with direction, focus and progress. And this sense of inner order brings a powerful feeling that of being in control of one's own journey. No one evolves in comfort. It's hard to admit, but it's true. Every real transformation goes through some degree of pain, resistance, or sacrifice. Whether in body, mind, or emotions, growth requires you to step out of your comfort zone. And the more you avoid discomfort, the more fragile you become. On the other hand, those who face discomfort with courage develop a strength that cannot be taken away. Think of a muscle. It only grows when it is challenged, when it feels pain, when it is taken beyond the usual. With the mind it's the same thing. If you always choose the easy path, your resilience atrophies. But when you face a tough workout, an exhausting day, a tough conversation, or an unpopular choice firmly, something inside you grows stronger. And no one can take that away. Discomfort is also a great teacher. He shows where your limitations are, your sabotaging beliefs, your hidden fears. Instead of running away from it, how about learning from it? Feeling discomfort does not mean that you are on the wrong path. Often, it means that you are exactly where you need to be in order to evolve. The butterfly only flies because it has previously gone through the pain of transformation in the cocoon. Of course, no one likes to suffer. But there is a difference between useful pain and useless pain. Useful pain is that which comes from discipline, effort, overcoming. Useless pain is that which is born of negligence, procrastination, regret. You choose which one you will face. But one thing is certain: running away from discomfort now usually means suffering much more later. So the next time you feel like giving up because it's hard, remember every step in discomfort is a step toward your best version. And he who learns to walk among thorns, walks steadily through any terrain. Most people see suffering as something to be avoided at all costs. But the Stoics taught us something powerful: suffering, when understood, can be our best teacher. It reveals weaknesses, points out imbalances, and invites us to transformation. It's not about enjoying pain, but about facing it wisely. When you stop resisting suffering, it stops dominating you. Think of a difficult phase you faced. Maybe it was the end of a relationship, a loss, a personal crisis. It hurts, of course. But, looking back, didn't you grow up after that? Didn't notice something you needed to change? Suffering has this capacity: it shakes the soul, destroys what is fragile and strengthens what is true. It's uncomfortable, yes, but deeply revealing. When you accept pain as part of the process, something changes inside you. Instead of fighting it, you learn from it. Instead of hiding, you observe. Physical and emotional discipline arises precisely from this conscious exposure to discomfort. Whether it's a hard workout or a moment of silence with your own thoughts, every experience is an opportunity for polishing. The Stoics practiced this daily. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself as a way of organizing pain and transforming it into wisdom. Epictetus, who lived as a slave, understood that external events are not good or bad, we are the ones who make sense of them. And this perspective changes everything. What once seemed like punishment becomes training. So the next time something hurts, take a deep breath and ask, what is this trying to teach me? By doing so, you step out of the role of victim and into the role of apprentice. And those who learn from pain become invincible. After all, suffering can hurt. But it can also liberate. Many people spend their lives seeking freedom outside: more money, more free time, fewer rules. But they ignore the most common and invisible prison of all: the prison of the mind. Racing thoughts, out-of-control emotions, constant comparisons, fear of judgment. All this chains the individual, even if he lives in a palace. True freedom starts from the inside out. Epictetus, who lived as a slave, taught that even in captivity, a man can be free if his mind is his ally. And this is profoundly current. You can have a stable job, a nice house, a healthy relationship. But if you're always feeling insufficient, anxious, or guilty, you're not free. You're carrying an inner cell, a cell that only you can open. Mental freedom is knowing how to choose one's own thoughts. It is not getting carried away by any emotion that appears. It is to observe before reacting. And, above all, it is to understand that you are not what you feel. You are the one who observes what you feel. This simple awareness, when practiced, transforms your life. Because you start to have more peace, more focus, more clarity about what really matters. Want a simple exercise? When a negative thought arises, ask, is this fact or is it interpretation? Often, the suffering is in the story we tell about the facts, not in the facts themselves. By interrupting this cycle, you make room for wiser responses and more conscious attitudes. And little by little, this new way of thinking becomes your new way of living. So, before you seek freedom outside, look within. See what binds you, what agitates you, what sabotages you. Because when the mind is at peace, the world outside no longer has the power to destabilize you. And that, my friend, is a freedom that no economic crisis or social rule can take away from you. The untrained mind behaves like a dog loose in a market. It runs everywhere, sniffs everything, is distracted by any stimulus. And this is a problem when you seek to live with clarity, purpose, and inner peace. Focusing is not just paying attention. It is knowing what deserves your attention and, above all, knowing how to say no to the one who tries to kidnap you. Focus is one of the most scarce superpowers today. How many times have you caught yourself in the middle of a task, but already thinking about another? Or reading something, but with your mind in 1,000 places? This is not just tiredness, it is mental deconditioning. The good news is that focus can be trained. And it all starts with the practice of presence, doing one thing at a time, with mindfulness. Simple in theory, powerful in practice. Another essential point is to question one's own thoughts. Not everything you think is true. The mind, when left alone, loves to create catastrophic scenarios, harsh judgments, and assumptions that wear it down. The first step to having mental discipline is not to automatically believe everything that pops into your head. Ask, where did this thought come from? Does he help me or sabotage me? Training focus and questioning thoughts requires repetition. And, like any muscle, the more you train, the stronger you get. A good daily practice is to set aside 5 minutes in the morning to take a deep breath, observe your thoughts, and set a clear intention for the day. It may seem little, but this conscious pause already begins to educate your mind to follow your lead and not the other way around. The mind will always try to pull you back into distractions, fears, and daydreams. But when you learn to redirect it gently and firmly, you begin to live with much more clarity and freedom. And this constant practice prepares you for the next step, aligning mind and body towards conscious action. Your body is like a mirror of your mind. Tension in the shoulders can be accumulated anxiety. Pain in the stomach, unexpressed anger. Constant tiredness, overthinking. The connection between mind and body is deep and direct. When your mind is in disarray, your body feels it. And when you take care of the mind, the body responds. They are not two separate systems, they are a single living experience. Have you ever noticed how, after a difficult decision, your body feels lighter? Or how, when you're stressed, your posture shrinks, your breathing shortens, and your heart races? These reactions are clear messages. Your body is talking to you all the time. And the more you learn to listen to it, the easier it becomes to perceive what is going on inside your mind. The practice of taking care of the body is not just vanity or physical health, it is an exercise in discipline and self-knowledge. Eating well, sleeping with quality, stretching, training. These are all ways of communicating with your own nervous system, of saying, I respect myself. And this respect generates stability. The more you honor your body, the more it becomes an ally on your journey. In addition, when you strengthen your body, you are training much more than muscles. He is training discipline, constancy, overcoming. Physical exertion is a reflection of inner strength. Each completed workout is a message to your mind, I deliver what I promise. And this coherence between mind and body is a powerful basis for emotional balance. So, if you want more clarity, more focus, more peace, start with the body as well. He is the temple where your mind dwells. And when both are aligned, you live with presence, power, and authenticity. And that paves the way for the next point, how physical training is also a tool of self-control. The body is a daily training ground for self-control. When you set out to train even with laziness, pain, or discouragement, you're developing more than muscle strength, you're shaping your mind. Physical discipline creates a solid foundation for resisting impulses in other areas of life. Every drop of sweat shed with intention strengthens not only the muscles, but also the will. Training regularly is a practical and accessible way to say I'm in charge. You may be tired, with 1,000 excuses, but you still get up and do what needs to be done. This attitude extends beyond training, it is reflected in work, studies, relationships. The habit of overcoming physical resistance prepares you to overcome any type of internal resistance. And you don't have to start big. It can be a walk, a series of push-ups, a dance class, whatever. The most important thing is to create a routine where movement becomes part of your identity. Over time, your brain associates action with overcoming. And when the mind realizes that you act in spite of the difficulties, it begins to trust you. This generates authentic inner strength. In addition, physical training generates hormones that balance your mood, regulate sleep, reduce anxiety. In other words, it's not just a matter of aesthetics or health, it's a strategy for emotional balance. A body in motion is a body that helps the mind function better. And the better your mind works, the easier it is to maintain self-control on a daily basis. Therefore, see physical training as a lever. It may seem difficult at first, but it becomes pleasurable with constancy. And, above all, it reminds you every day that you are capable of facing discomfort for something greater. This, in itself, is already a powerful form of freedom. You can lose money and recover. You can lose objects and replace them. But time, once it passes, it never comes back. It is the only truly non-renewable resource. And even so, many people waste it as if it were infinite. The Stoic Seneca said it's not that we have little time, it's that we lose a lot. This phrase should echo every day in our minds. Stop and think how many hours of your day are consumed by distractions, useless tasks, or conversations that don't add up. How many times do you say I don't have time, but spend 40 minutes scrolling through social networks without realizing it? The problem is not the lack of time, it is the lack of direction. Those who do not know where they want to go, let time slip through their fingers like loose sand. Valuing time is valuing life itself. And that starts with small choices: getting up at the right time, prioritizing what matters, learning to say no to what is not aligned with your goals. When you treat time with respect, it begins to reward you with productivity, peace, and fulfillment. You feel that every day counts, that every hour has a purpose. A practical tip: keep a time diary for a few days. Write down everything you do and how much time you spend on each activity. You'll be amazed at how much time is wasted without awareness. Just the act of observing brings more presence. From there, you can adjust, eliminate excesses, create focus blocks. It's like tuning an instrument: the more you calibrate, the more in tune your routine becomes. In the end, time is freedom. Whoever controls his time, controls his life. And this is one of the greatest forms of personal power. Because when you understand the value of every minute, you start to live with more intention, and you naturally get closer to the next step: transforming time management into managing your own freedom. Having freedom doesn't mean having all day free, it means knowing what to do with the time you have. The person who organizes the hours well lives with more lightness, more focus, and less guilt. On the other hand, the one who lives putting out fires, jumping from task to task, without clarity of what is a priority, always feels busy, but rarely productive. True freedom is born of conscious control over your time. When you manage your time, you're actually managing your energy, your priorities, and your purpose. That's not to say you need to have a military timetable. It just means that you have mastered the art of choosing. Know what should be done, when and why. And, above all, to know what should be left aside. Freedom is also having the courage to say no to what you do not build. Simple tools can change everything: to-do lists with realistic limits, blocks of time with strategic breaks, weekly review of goals. You can, for example, use the Pomodoro technique: 25 minutes of focus and 5 minutes of rest, or the Eisenhower method, dividing tasks into urgent, important. Small practices like these create a sense of order that expands your inner freedom. And you know what happens when you master your time? You stop living in reaction mode and start living in creation mode. You start to make room for what really matters: a personal project, moments with those you love, your health, your faith. Time ceases to be a burden and becomes a sacred resource. You realize that it is not only for doing things, but for living with presence. So if you want more freedom, start by looking at your schedule. What's eating up your time today? Does it bring you closer or further away from who you want to be? Remember, every minute has a cost. And every choice is a silent statement about what you value. It is not wrong to feel anger, fear, or sadness. The mistake is to let these emotions take the wheel of your life. Emotional discipline does not mean repressing feelings, but rather learning to manage them intelligently. It's like being the captain of your own ship. You can't avoid the storms, but you can choose how to navigate through them. And this requires practice, presence, and maturity. An emotionally undisciplined person reacts before thinking. He screams in traffic, gives up in the face of fear, sabotages himself on impulse. Someone with emotional discipline, on the other hand, observes before acting. Feel, breathe, analyze. And only then decides. This does not mean coldness, but inner strength. The more you understand your emotions, the more they start to work for you, not against you. Want a practical example? The next time you're about to react on impulse, like sending that cross message, eating out of anxiety, or walking away from someone out of pride, stop for 3 seconds. Take a deep breath. And ask, is this reaction aligned with who I want to be? This simple space between the stimulus and the response is where true emotional freedom is born. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul remains invincible when it refuses to react to pain or pleasure." He knew that true stability comes not from avoiding emotions, but from maintaining integrity even when they come. This is serenity. And serenity is like an invisible shield that protects you from external chaos, because you have already strengthened yourself inside. If you want a more balanced, relationally healthy, and mentally clear life, invest in your emotional discipline. It is the foundation that sustains all other forms of self-control. And the more you exercise it, the more you become someone who is unshakable, someone who feels everything but is not overwhelmed by anything. Self-knowledge is not an esoteric practice, nor a luxury reserved for a few. It is an urgent need for those who want to live with truth and purpose. When you know yourself, you understand your triggers, your limits, your strengths, and your weaknesses. And that changes everything. Because we can only master what we know. If you don't know who you are, any distraction leads you astray, any opinion brings you down. The first step towards this domain is observation. How do you react to pressure? What usually takes you off track? What habits strengthen you and which weaken you? When you start answering these questions truthfully, you start to identify patterns that repeat themselves. And more than that, he has the power to choose them. And the power of choice is freedom. To know oneself is also to accept oneself. Not to settle down, but to act with more compassion and less rigidity. It is to understand that you are a project under construction, in continuous evolution. And that every mistake is a clue, not a sentence. Self-awareness paves the way for more aligned decisions, healthier relationships, and a more authentic life. Seneca said, "No wind blows in favor of those who do not know where they are going." Self-knowledge is precisely what gives you direction. It is the inner map that guides your outer choices. And the deeper you go into this map, the more you realize that true freedom is not outside, nor in others. It is in acting in a way that is consistent with who you really are. So, if you seek self-control, discipline, and true freedom, start with you. Because at the end of the day, those who know themselves deeply, live with purpose, and those who live with purpose do not let themselves be dragged by life, they lead it. And now that you've come this far, I ask you, what is your definition of freedom? Isn't it time to reframe what this really means to you? Discipline, far from being a prison, can be just what will set you free. Not to make you a rigid being, but to give you direction, clarity, and the power of choice, because freedom without direction is just disorientation disguised as autonomy. What can you start changing today? What personal rule can you establish? What small impulse can you resist even today to get closer to your best version? Don't wait to be ready. Readiness is born of practice. And self-mastery is not a final destination, but a constant journey where every step counts. If these reflections touched you in any way, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and walk with us on this path of awareness, inner strength, and practical wisdom. There's a lot of content coming to strengthen you even more inside. And remember, those who govern themselves do not need to bow down to anyone else.